Hello and welcome to the Mirror Gaming Podcast with me, Nathan Bliss. I'm delighted to be joined again by Miles Jacobson, Studio Director at Sports Interactive. I always really enjoy talking to you, not only because we always have good conversations, but it also means that we're approaching the launch of a new Football Manager game, which is always a really exciting time. How are you feeling ahead of the launch of this one?
Nervous trepidation at the moment, so we're a few weeks away, there's a bit of work still to do, but the team are doing a great job, so I'm already really enjoying playing the game, which is probably annoying for people to hear, seeing as it's a few weeks away. But I always get the same feeling before launch, because the game is so important to so many people. You know, our playtime's 300 hours average playtime in a year. It means it's a big part of people's lives. It's not just a game, it's more of a hobby to a lot of people. And I just really hope they enjoy it, because if they enjoy it, I get to make another one. If they don't enjoy it, we don't. So, and we would all very much like to be making more games. So yeah, little bit nervous, but it's looking really good and it's playing really well.
Yeah,
so.
I can attest that it's a bit more than a hobby for me as well, personally. And I'm going to annoy people even more in the fact that thank you so much for inviting me here to play an early version.
No problem.
Really,
hope you're enjoying it.
Very, very much so.
Good.
I want to talk to you about one of the new features which I'm really excited about, is the agents getting involved in the game a little bit more this year. I think that's a really interesting element, because it's not one-dimensional anymore. You don't go to the player screen to then offer the contract. Everything's reworded in that the agent is now fully embedded in that experience. How did you decide to put that in the game? Was it
So we've been talking about it for a while, and I know quite a lot of agents, so get to speak to them. And there are basically rules against players agreeing deals with clubs before the clubs have actually spoken, right? Those are the rules in real life. Yet we hear all the time, you see it in the back page of the Mirror, you know, a deal agreed on personal terms, now they've got to sort out the fees. So it's a case of working out exactly how that process works. And when a player has an agent, that doesn't stop a club from phoning up the agent and going, hey, we're interested in this player, because you're trying to find out whether there is interest there or not. Having a little negotiation with the agent on their demands for the player, you know, this is what it's going to take for the player to join you. But it's not just about the full demands. It's also when you're in that situation of a player doesn't want to join you, well, you want to know what you need to do to be able to bring that player to your club as well. Where do you need to be in the league? And there will still be players that will turn around and go, look, I've just got no interest in joining you whatsoever. But it's important having those steps, not just for the other, not just for players that you're looking to sign, but also for your own players as well. Being able to talk to the agent about what's going to make the player happy. It's something that those of us who live in the real world rather than the football world probably don't understand, because we don't have agents going in and talking to our bosses on our behalf. Yeah. But chief execs don't tend to deal with the players directly. Managers do talk to them on the training ground, but they won't necessarily have meetings with the player without their agent being there in the room. Yeah. And it does tend to be done via phone calls and more these days WhatsApp. So we've kind of used a messaging system inside the game to be the way that you communicate with agents, but you can still call them into the office with the player as well. I think that's such an important part of football that we couldn't continue not making them so important in game, but we had to do it in a way that was going to give benefit to the person that's playing the game. And it's a great way to find information and a great way to be able to start planning your future squad, which then ties into the squad planner. Everything in the game is a jigsaw puzzle, right, that fits together. Yeah. So when we're working on the feature set, we have to make all of that stuff work, and those, although they're completely separate features, they do work hand in hand with each other.
One thing I really liked about that is that I intentionally broke down contract communications with one of my players when I was playing the game a bit earlier on, and instead of having that screen come up with all the red saying client is not interested in talking to you, you can now go to an agent and kind of apologise for for the contract negotiations you've had previously, or try and convince them to. So there's always that kind of third party element there where there wasn't before. That's
not
really
always. Nice. So there are times when it just breaks down completely, and that's the time that we're going to have to sell the player, right? But if there is a breakdown and you don't go and talk to the agent, but the player starts forgiving you without that conversation, they will come back to you and go, hey, we're ready to sit down and talk again. Because again, it's what happens in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all layers, as you said. It's all making things. And now we'll get onto the recruitment plan, which I think is really one of the biggest things for me, is because we all do this. I'm speaking on behalf of all my fellow FM players, but we all do this in our head or on notebooks or spreadsheets, however you want to. You're always planning ahead, aren't you?
Think how many trees we're saving by adding Squad Planner to the game.
Absolutely,
Brilliant.
absolutely. But one of the things I really like is you can, like you said, you can plan your squad in advance. You can look at next season, how that could look, the season after even. And there's also that matrix where you can have a look at the actual squad itself, and you can have a look at who your experienced players are, who's at the peak. And we do this in our heads or our notebooks, but it's really nice to see it in the game, because you just it brings all that experience together, and you're spending more time in the game rather than looking at a notepad.
I think, having been playing the game with Squad Planner for a while now, I don't understand how I ever played it without it. And there are some tweaks going into it before release as well, which you haven't seen today. So one of those, at the moment in the alpha version of the game, or pre-alpha version of the game, which is where we are now, you can add players that you have on your shortlist to the planner to be able to see how they fit in. Yeah. You'll actually be able to right click on any player in the game world and add them directly to the squad planner. So it's just making it that little bit more usable for people. So you can do that and add them in, and then ask your assistant how they're going to fit in, or decide it yourself how they're going to fit in, and move the players around, and then get rid and then add someone else in. So it adds a huge extra element to the transfers side of the game, as well as adding an extra element to just being able to plan with the current players that you have as well. So very flexible system, and it's, for a load of text to be that beautiful is difficult, but it's beautiful. I love it.
My favourite thing about it is that your players don't have any idea what you do in that mode, which is brilliant.
But the first time I saw a squad matrix in real life, it was all on a whiteboard in a manager's office at a training ground, and you're just sitting there going, well, if a manager walks in and sees that they're second choice, on there, that's not going to be good. So yeah, having it being able to be hidden away where your staff know what's there, but the players don't. Is a very good thing.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see a lot of people being in that page for a while, I think.
Absolutely.
In the new game.
It's essential, and again, that ties in with the agent stuff, but it also ties in with the recruitment meetings, and has now been brought into the recruitment meetings as well, so you can really plan effectively for short-term, medium and long-term.
Another thing I want to talk to you about as well was it's a small change for many people maybe who are maybe new to the series or have played it for a while, but I've noticed a bit of a change in language in the tactics screen in regards to some of the things where in previous games, FM players who played the game will know what certain actions do. By pressing a button, you know what that will do. But this year, the button says what it will do. So I've got some examples where he talks about mid-block, low block. It talks about stopping crosses, trap inside, whereas there was a different language in previous ones. That I think that's really useful. Even for experienced FM players, you just need a bit of a refresh in terms of what that action will do. So
we thought that pressing a button saying, do an offside trap, there's so many different kinds of offside traps that you can play. So yeah, it's important. We've spent a lot of time working on the defensive area of the game this year, which might sound weird because everyone wants to score as many goals, but we're not an arcade game, we're a simulation, and that defensive side's really important. So the blocks and interceptions being in there, it's not just language changes, they do other things as to the previous options as well, but it just makes it clearer. More people than ever have got the coaching badges. We need to be talking in that parlance. Yeah. More people than ever are watching Monday Night Football on Sky and wanting that analysis. They're watching TIFO, they're watching 433. These people are breaking things down a lot more. You have a lot more football hipsters, and I don't say that in a bad way, who are wanting XG. We've added XA to the game as well, expected assists. If we're going down those routes, then it's pretty crazy if we're not changing our language accordingly to what's being spoken about in football. But we do describe what they all mean as well. So, it's an educational piece. If people don't know what they are, there are simple explanations.
Yeah, and something we've seen a lot more as well in real life is the supporters having that having that say with the board, and we've seen obviously with the failed Super League, people protesting outside stadiums and things. I think one of the really interesting parts for me about this year's game is having that supporter expectations, because supporter confidence has been in the game for a while now.
Yep.
But now, the way I've experienced it today, you have different expectations for both your supporters and the board, and depending on where you are in the table or what team you manage, those can be drastically different. And then you have that choice of, okay, if I play this way of football, I'm going to upset the supporters maybe, but the board will be happy.
Yep.
Or the vice versa. So that's a really interesting element about keeping both supporters on side, but also the people who pay your wages in the game, which is your board. So you need to keep your job as well.
Well, that's a difficult thing to do in real life, isn't it? Because board expectations are often different to supporter expectations in any job that you may do. Your customers may have different expectations to your managers. But you can talk about those things in press conferences as well. So there are questions that come up about that. I'm not happy in my second season in Watford with what formation my board have told me to play. But it is relatively effective and it's getting me results. My supporters want more attacking, free-flowing football. They'll have it season 2. The next season, so season 3 in game. But you have to balance those things up, and supporters can often have very different expectations to boards as well. But different types of supporters also have different expectations, from the hardcore to the fair weather supporters. So having all of that in the mix is it's a big part of the game. And whilst you're not going to get sacked if the supporters are unhappy per se, you will get sacked if the supporters' unhappiness makes the board unhappy.
There's always trade-offs. There's always trades of having to perform with your manager. But I also want to talk to you about the Champions League, which will be in FM23 this year, which is amazing. I think
Champions League, Europa League and Conference League.
Absolutely. You bring up that point, which
is
really interesting, because you want the Champions League to feel special, but you also want the Europa Conference League to feel special.
Absolutely.
Because if you're a smaller team, you're getting into that, you want to have that experience, but you also don't want it to be the same as the Champions League, because you want players to look forward to being in their other competitions. So how difficult was that a balance to strike in the game?
Well, we looked at UEFA's brand guidelines really, really carefully, and how they differentiate it and how the TV channels are differentiating it, and being able to have those different themes and the different fonts and the different graphics. And, they spent a lot of time working on this. So from that perspective, it was like, okay, they've kind of done that stuff for us, which made it a little bit easier. But, we added Bundesliga screen graphics last year, so when we got the UEFA license, it was, oh yeah, let's do that, but what else can we do? So those cup draws are now really important, and the cup draws, they use the fonts of the different competitions, they use the branding, they use the music as well. So even the draws feel special, and they do go on for quite a long time, so we've got various options to speed them up in there. So it's even better than real life from that perspective. But it's been brilliant being able to work with UEFA and going down as far as making sure that we've got the right balls in those matches.
Different camera angle as well?
Yeah, different camera angle. We're really lucky that with a lot of the leagues and competitions that we work with, they don't just see it as a transaction, they see it as a way to promote what they're doing. And that was exactly the same with UEFA. They want to reach a wider audience, and they want our game to help them do that. So we've tried to make it as authentic as possible, whilst just making it feel so special when you get there. It has to feel different.
Yeah, I will admit that I used to skip the draw all the time, so now it make it a little bit more special for me, having to watch the balls come out, and just that a little bit of immersion that I suppose you strive for every year, to add these little bit of elements that just add to it all the time.
It's the commentary that goes along with it as well. They're really educational, being in those draws, learning about a lot of the clubs that are in there that you might not know very well.
Yeah, but you haven't got any of the ceremonial stuff in there that takes hours, have you?
No, we don't have Shakira coming on pre-match and playing a concert, because would have been too expensive.
That's good. I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to hear that. But Miles, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Spending this much time with us. only a few weeks now before the launch of the new game. I know me personally, I can't wait to play it, you know, my own setup and stuff, and get started on my own save.
Well, it's lovely to be able to do this in person
Absolutely.
as well, rather
Absolutely.
than via a camera. So thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me, and really look forward to the new game, and best of luck with it in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Hope everyone enjoys it when it comes out.
Thanks, Carl.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.